Hello, everyone. This is Aretha Burwell, and I'm doing Prophet Ezekiel. Are you guys ready for me to introduce you to Ezekiel? I think it's time. Ezekiel is the son of man, and he was among the captivity of the Jews, which destroyed the city of Judah and deported them to Babylon during the first deportation in 597 BCE. He also was the prophet that would be a watchman of the nations of Israel to protect and warn the people of danger that was ahead. His name means God's strength, and which that is in the Holy Tongue is pronounced Ezekiel. In English, the name is Ezekiel. He lived 2,600 years ago in what today is called Iraq, and which was at the time Babylon. Ezekiel lived in Babylon, but he was not a Babylonian. He was an Israelite, and he had been brought to Babylon against his will when he was held captive and taken away. Also, he was the prophecies that he was told to by the Yahweh. He was being the destruction of Jerusalem caused friction among the Jews who were with him in Babylon at that time. When his prophecies came true, the people began to listen to him more intently. Also, when he was taking siege into the end of the destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple of Jerusalem, he was very much a shepherd and a watchman for the nation of Israel. And as a shepherd, he protected the people. And as the watchman, he warned them of danger ahead. Now, he had three important personal lessons. One of them was the importance of an individual moral responsibility. He also teaches that through God is reluctantly to discipline his people is a must. He also assures us that God will ultimately triumph in history. He also, the book of Ezekiel, it turned the information that he was trying to get out to warn the people was that it turned the wicked to righteousness through the words and threats. Now, during the captivity of Judah, which you're showing now the map, that was in 597 BC. That is when Ezekiel received his call to be a prophet. He also had two ministries that he was able to do, that God called him to do. One of them was to have messages contained that warns the Jerusalem about the destruction. Also, he was the prophet that took up the ministry, and now his message was one of the hope, promises, and comfort for the exiles. He's showing here that he uses his prophecies, parables, signs, and symbols to dramatize God's message to his exiled people. Though they are like dry bones in the sun, which will reassemble them and breathe life into the nation once again. He also was a priest, a prophet, ministers during the darkest days of Judah's history, the 70-year period of Babylonian captivity. Okay, this is showing Ezekiel's temple. Now, after the news of the fall comes, Ezekiel changes his messages to one of the future hopes and restoration for the people. He also describes his encounters with the glories of God. And he is showing what the temple that was, this is the second one that's shown of the vision of the third temple in 572 BC. Also, he was the watchman. Now, the watchman is what he was called, and that's what God wanted him to be. Now, what that means is he's supposed to see the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet to warn the people. And if he does not warn the people, then they would surely die. So he would have to watch out and hear the horn trumpet blow so he can warn the people of what's about to come ahead of them, the prophecies. That was a must. Okay, now his message was to address the remnant, of Judah, and were the best known spiritual message in chapter 37. It is the vision of the valley of the dry bones. That's the most important one that he has. And the hand of the Lord came up upon me and brought me out into the spirit of the Lord and set me down in the midst of the valley, and it was full of bones. Now that also for the economic and social situation due to the captivity and the destruction of Jerusalem, he was determined to prophesy to the people and gain their obedience of the covenant. And also he used to focus on the people of the exile and breathe life into them as the nation dealing with the dry bones. That's why he called it the dry bones. He was trying to give them life. So also this part is showing where Ezekiel preaches to the dry bones a great sermon. But he thought what would happen to have a glass of water on you by any chance. So he asked him for water to try to get his life back. And one person said, wow, I bet he is really thirsty. And one is saying, oh, how is he going to drink it? He can't drink it because he's a skeleton. He's got dry bones. So that's showing another picture of the dry bones. And this picture here is when he's thinking about what he did so wrong because he didn't warn the people of what the prophecy was. And by him not warning the people what the prophecy was, they all dried up. They was dry bones. So he's got to teach everyone obedience is the key. And you have to abide by what God has sent his message to for the people of the land. Now he's and that one is showing, can these bones live? So also with the bibliography information, the ministry had begun in the first 3 decades of the 6th century, 2,600 years ago, of the deportation of Jerusalem. And also there were his origin, in ministry. Ezekiel came from Jerusalem and was deported to Babylon. We'd already stated that. Now his class and occupation and education, he was a member of the Judean ruling class, and it was pertaining to the anger and grief. God had chosen him as the prophet to stretch to Israel to foresee the disaster of nation. He is a teacher. He's a priest, a prophet, and minister. And his education is used by his prophecies, parables, signs, and symbols to relay his message to his exiled people. Okay, the call was his earliest prophecies dated from 593 BCE. And the type of prophet he was a watchman prophet, which was the strength of God prophet and one of the 4 greater prophets. Now, he did have a couple of texts. The condition of the text was an English translation that were in very good condition. And he also had some outlines. And one of the outlines are the visions of God, the prophecies against Jerusalem, judgment on the nation, the blessing on his people. And that is the main one that I like. So a lot of people like that one because that one pertains to watchmen and the fall of Jerusalem. It also shows the shepherds and the shepherd, judgment on Syria. Israel shall receive a new heart and spirit. The dry bones, 2 sticks, battle of the Gog and Magog, a new temple, the measurements, the return of the Lords of glory in the altar. The temple is holy. Celebrations and worship, the waters and trees. That was an excellent one, and I really did like that one a lot. I'm quite sure a lot of other people did as well. And he also, the kinds of material that was present during that time, there was 2 different kinds of material. One dated oracles against Judah and Jerusalem and against the foreign nations, and additional updated material. And another one was a redactor that was placed on all materials into a chronicle framework and put the oracles against the foreign nations in their present positions. And there were later expansions and additions made. Also, now I want to show a little bit more cartoon and to try to make it a little humorous. And all God is really saying is, if you live by the 10 Commandments, you will be righteous. And one would say the good news is it is an individual decision, but that is what I'm saying. So that is so restrictive, and God is saying it's unfair. Yeah, of course. So was the apple. So that was a little humorous, but to make a long story short, the whole situation is he was trying to get the people from exile to be holy and be get rid of all the imperfections that they had in our body. And by doing that, they had to obey God so they can make one land and soil clean from all impurities. He was on a mission, was to make the nation's land and soil clean from all impurities and giving the people a new heart, a new spirit. And he used the metaphor of the wood to represent Judah coming together under as one kingdom. So that was pretty much how Ezekiel came about. So he was one of the major prophets of God. And he had a lot of work that he had to do to try to convince the people to listen to him, to take him as being one of God's peoples, that they had to abide by the rules that he was telling them to do, the covenants. And if you didn't go by the rules, that you would surely die, and he would be responsible for it, for everybody's death.